guy named Bob Pelessier's life changed forever. It was nearly 1 in the morning, and the 56-year-old truck driver was flipping through the channels when he came across a late-night infomercial advertising an unprecedented breakthrough in telecommunications. Mildly intrigued, Bob listened as the announcer explained that something called a cellular telephone was about to change the lifestyles of millions, and that investing in this technology was the business opportunity of the century. At first, Bob was skeptical, but when he heard that AT&T predicted one day as many as 40% of all calls would come from cell phones, he slowly began to change his mind. Now, Bob had never made it past high school, and he had virtually no money to invest. But the more he learned, the more convinced he became that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity he couldn't afford to pass up. And luckily for him and his wife, he had the good sense to go ahead and get all the details, so he could decide for himself whether or not this really was the big break they'd been waiting for. Of course, you can probably guess how things turned out for Bob Pelessier and his wife, but I urge you to stick with me for just a moment longer, because this story has a unique twist that could help you secure a small fortune off the meteoric rise of mobile devices like smartphones and tablet computers. Exactly how much are we talking? Well, had you invested just $5,000 in the little-known company I'm going to tell you about today, shortly before early smartphones like the BlackBerry 6210 began to hit the market, today you'd be sitting on more than $479,000. Granted, I can't guarantee those kind of gains going forward, but I can tell you that one of the smartest investors I've ever met is convinced that right now is the perfect time to get invested in this breakout company. Over the next few minutes, you'll discover exactly why he thinks this is one of the most unique and intriguing opportunities out there for investors like you today. And you'll see why he's not the only one who thinks so. Famed money manager Gary Kaminsky calls this company a pure play on wireless growth, and notes that it's generating tremendous amounts of cash with a very shareholder-friendly focus. CNBC's Lee Brody says he likes this company because it's closely tied to an industry that's poised to explode. And Oppenheimer analyst Timothy Horan says that of the select few companies that operate in this extremely important wireless niche, this one is not only the biggest, but also the best managed. And apparently, he's not the only one who thinks so. Harvard Business Review recently named this company's longtime leader one of the top 100 best performing CEOs in the world. Nevertheless, you might be wondering if you wouldn't just be better off investing in a well-known giant like Apple or Verizon, which brings me back to my original story. As you probably guessed, Bob Pelessier and his wife Lorraine went on to retire as multimillionaires, despite the fact that he drove a big rig for the better part of 4 decades and she worked 12 hours a day selling sandwiches out of the back of a van. And it probably comes as no surprise that dozens of other people just like Bob and Lorraine walked away with just as much, if not more. But here's something that probably will surprise you. These folks didn't invest in the companies that made cell phones like Apple, or even in the carriers that owned and operated the cellular networks like Verizon. Instead, they invested in something far less obvious, but far more valuable. You see, what they essentially ended up buying was the rights to the radio frequencies that cell phones use to make wireless phone calls. Tech types call this spectrum. In fact, Bob Pelessier owned the rights for just 2 cities, Manchester and Nashua, New Hampshire. Now, I realize that doesn't sound all that impressive, but here's the thing. Had Bob invested in a company that made cell phones, the value of his investment would have been directly tied to how many cell phones that company was able to sell. And had he invested in a specific cellular carrier, it would have been directly tied to how many subscribers that network was able to attract. But because all cell phones use the same frequencies, the value of the spectrum Bob owned increased regardless of which cell phone brands people were buying or carriers they were choosing. All that mattered was that more and more people were using cell phones all the time. In other words, it was the ultimate win-win wireless investment. And today, I'm going to introduce you to an incredibly similar opportunity. Granted, this company doesn't own, license, or lease spectrum, but it does provide behind-the-scenes infrastructure that is absolutely crucial to the functioning of virtually every single cellular network, meaning its value isn't dependent on the success of any one smartphone brand or carrier. All that matters is that more and more people are using mobile devices like smartphones and tablet computers on cellular networks all the time. But in order to fully understand why it smartphone meant as much to most people as cell phone did to Bob Pellissier back in 1985. But then a company called Research in Motion developed the BlackBerry.
It's a two-way head
Before long,
connector
they started
recharger
appearing in the
unit that
hands
goes
of
with
every
the
time-strapped businessman in
this
America.
end and that end of this power cord
Apple
strap that
developed
going
the
around my
iPhone,
designer
which
bag and
instantly
recharge
became
that
the
cell
number
phone
one
ports in the
must-have
bag.
gadget for everyone from teenagers to professors, hippies to soccer moms. And suddenly, everyone from Nokia to Samsung to
And this is
Google
from 2005 to
to get in on the action.
2013.
Nowadays, it's highly unlikely you can find someone who doesn't spend all day glued to one of these devices. In fact, AT&T has seen traffic on their network jump by more than 20,000% over the past 5 years. Of course, it's been a similar story for the other major carriers too, and it looks as though our addiction to smartphones is only going to get worse. According to Forrester Research, 2.2 trillion text messages will be sent this year in the U.S. alone, which works out to more than 75,000 text messages every single second of every single day. Meanwhile, Google chairman Eric Schmidt recently told reporters that over 1.5 million new Android-based smartphones are being activated per day. And market intelligence firm IHS forecasts that 2013 will be the first time that smartphone sales will account for more than half of all cell phone sales, which is a full 2 years earlier than they had originally predicted. IHS further estimates that by 2016, over 2/3 of all cell phones sold worldwide will be smartphones. And when you think about it, that only makes sense. After all, the major advantage that smartphones have over regular cell phones is that you can do just about anything on them. Like check your email, log on to Facebook, surf the web, stream songs from
designer
Pandora,
bag has
or even entire
antenna
movies
zipper,
from Netflix.
7-way cell phone port for the cell phone, iPod, MP3s, and more. We have battery pack, water resistant in and out.
That's the most that they're going to get
power
ready. They
car
don't
strap
want to
detachable.
too much because they don't want me to hurry and put it on the thing. But he telling me in other words by making the one simple move revealed in the following report. You can make